Hello, everybody. Welcome to the MVP TechBytes, where we showcase one of the MVPs. Today, we have a very special guest, Daniel. Daniel, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. Hello Taspar. Thank you so much for inviting me to this show. My name is Daniel K. I will not finish my last name, it's hard to pronounce. I'm Microsoft Most Valuable Professional. I'm happy to be here, and today we are going to talk about the exciting topic about verifiable credentials and Microsoft Entra Verified ID. Thank you so much for
Excellent.
joining and watching.
Thank you. So today we're going to talk about Entra. So maybe I'll share it. Let's share your screen, and then let's go through some of the slides.
Of course. Of course. So today we are going to talk about the centralized identity with Microsoft Entra Verified ID. And I would like to talk about this topic because I think that it can be interesting for some of you guys who are watching this show, this video. And I would like to describe some differences between the current approach to identity management and how it differ when it comes to uh, sharing identity information. Before that, really quickly, I want to tell a few more words about me. So my name is Daniel, as I mentioned before. I'm cloud engineer and consultant at Formula 5. I'm also Microsoft Most Valuable Professional, focused on the Microsoft Azure, DevOps, and identity topics. And recently, especially on identity topics, I would say, if you would like to connect, here is my Twitter. There is also the link to my LinkedIn profile. I'm happy to connect. And also, I encourage you to visit my techmindfactory.com blog, where I try to share some interesting and valuable content about many different kinds of topics: DevOps, DevSecOps, Azure, identity. And I also encourage you to visit my YouTube channel, where I post some videos about also those topics. So nice to meet you guys. And yeah, we can move forward with the current topic.
Sounds good. We'll share all of those things in our show notes too.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Tasfar, for that. It's really important to mention that. Okay, so really quickly, so Microsoft Entra Verified ID, before we will dive into the topic and specific service details, it's good to understand what happened and what's happening right now on the market. So until now, I would say until now, when recording this video, or until now, where we have decentralized identity solutions, the world was more centralized, I would say. So in this typical world of centralized identity, we have something what is called identity provider. It can be Azure Active Directory, it can be Okta, some other identity providers, basically. And in this world, identity provider basically controls the life cycle and usage of credentials. And also in a centralized identity systems, identity providers holds user profile data. And that's crucial because if you think about, like, for instance, Facebook, you know that you have profile there and you can sign into Facebook, but obviously the data of your profile is also owned and stored by Facebook. And this is quite interesting when we will talk about the decentralized world and some, I would say, demands when it comes to this aspect. And applications and services obviously trust this identity provider, this component. So every time you want to access some secure resource like application, API, and so on, you have to authenticate first. And if you want to get some data, there is also authorization part. But basically, those applications trust identity provider. So you can have multiple applications secured by Azure AD, for instance.
So I
But
have a
the
question
case,
regarding
yeah,
I have a
of
question
course,
regarding this diagram over there. So
yeah,
if we go back to the
this one,
previous one, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So you see the identity provider. That could be your. Are you saying that could be your Active Directory? That could be Facebook, or there could be Okta or somebody else. And when we
Yes.
talk about external IDPs, external identity providers, what are those sort of?
So basically, in this specific picture, this is something what is called federation. So basically,
Hmm,
external identity providers. This is something that you call, or you build this trust relationship. So you can say,
okay,
like, okay, my organization has Azure Active Directory, but also we trust those other organizations that own Azure Active Directory too. So it's
okay,
just to show that basically we can build this trust relationship using federation, but still there is centralized world because each identity provider owns its own data and users' data.
Okay. And then the relying parties are?
And the relying parties are applications. So basically,
Okay.
those are the applications that trust identity provider. So if users from the left side would like to access relying parties, so applications on the right side, users
Mhm.
have to sign in first, authenticate using account and credentials in the identity provider, and then access is granted to those applications.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Good questions. And thanks. It's always good to clarify things, so to avoid confusion. So
Exactly.
when you think about the centralized identity systems, you can also notice that there are some kinds of problems behind this. So when you think about a centralized identity provider, it owns user data, profile, credentials, and so on. So in case of some disaster, let's say, or when there will be some disruption with this system, yes, and system is down, then you cannot sign in with your account, you cannot access applications secured by this system. And some
Mhm.
time ago, probably you are aware of that, there was this huge outage of Facebook, for instance, and users could not sign in with their credentials and access their Facebook accounts and so on. That's one example, yes? But you can try to imagine many more. So basically, it's single point of failure. That's the one thing
Mhm.
that is something we have to think about when it comes to centralized systems. The another thing is that when you think about user profiles, again, there is a problem because who is the owner of the profile?
Mhm.
Is it user? It's not. I mean, like in the context of identity, obviously, user has credentials, but the profile data is stored on the identity provider side, yeah,
Mhm.
or internally in the organization. But it means that there is some problem sometimes with compliance, yes, or regulations. Like, okay, so who is the real owner of the data of the profile? So that's why, and obviously there are some other problems, but basically those problems I mentioned
Mhm.
was like, I would say they were like a foundation to start thinking about something new, something different to support expansion of managing identities for users. And this is why the centralized identity systems were discovered. And in the
Mhm.
decentralized identity systems, situation is different, basically. So
Okay.
in the decentralized identity systems concept, the
Mhm.
control of the life cycle and usage of the credentials, user credentials, is shared between three parties. So the
Okay.
issuer, so the party who is issuing the credential, the holder, so the user in this specific case, and relying party or verifier who is consuming this credential. So if you
Okay.
look at this diagram, basically you will see that in the decentralized world, the owner of the data is Alice here. So the holder,
Yes.
there is verifiable
Mhm.
credentials wallet. So those credentials will land into user's wallet.
Mhm.
So basically, the centralized identity gives users and organizations greater control of their data. Yes, how data is shared, delivered, and so on. Because in this specific scenario, the profile of the user is not stored on the identity provider side. It's stored in the digital wallet that is controlled by the user, and
Mhm.
obviously, there can be multiple organizations that will issue those verifiable credentials. They will land in the wallet, like in the phone, Microsoft Authenticator app, which I will describe in a minute. And then the
Okay.
user can decide where and how to share those credentials.
The user is the one who actually owns the wallet because it's just like a physical wallet that you actually have in your
Exactly.
pocket, for example,
Yes.
and you own the identity, and then
Yes.
you actually share it with the you. It's almost like a think of it as like I'm trying to simplify it, almost like your driver's license, for example. You store it in your in
Mhm.
your in your wallet, and then there's also an
Right.
issuer, like the government issued you the driver's license, and then now you actually the police officer comes, he verifies that hey, this is the right, you are who you are from the picture, and
Yes.
everything like verifies is authentic, and then now you could drive along now, it's okay.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. That's very good example, Tasfor. That's how it works. So it's different, yeah, than a
Yeah,
centralized identity approach.
exactly. Yeah, you become the owner, and there's also the GDPR basically, because now you're not no longer
Yes.
actually having your data outside outside your own vicinity, basically outside your own country. And actually, if you travel too, you still have that information with you, rather. So
Mhm. Correct.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
correct, Taskfor. And one more thing I want to add to what you mentioned, because it's super
Mm,
exciting and interesting. Because in a typical centralized world, you have to expose all the data. So you can try to imagine
mm,
the situation that sometimes you want to share some information about your profile, but you don't want to share all the details. So try to imagine the
mm,
situation that you have your ID with photo, with some other details like street address and so on and so on. But basically, you want to only share the information that your age, you are mature enough. You are above the 18 years old, let's say. But you
exactly.
don't want to
Mm,
disclose the information about your address and so on. Yes. So
mm,
with verifiable credentials, this will be possible. So that's the difference here. So you can decide which part of your profile you will share to
mm.
access specific resource or to prove your identity.
Yeah, awesome.
That's yeah. Okay, so let's continue. So verifiable credentials are just digital cryptographically secure version of the physical credentials. So exactly like you mentioned, Tasvar, like driving license, it can be
Mm,
academic diploma, it can be a verified employee to confirm that someone is really working for a specific company. So in this specific scenario, you can just create this digital representation of your real world credentials. And
mm.
this is where Microsoft Entra Verified ID can help. And this is
Okay.
how we are going to describe it today. So when you think about Microsoft Entra, obviously this is like this umbrella, yes, with different kinds of products. There is Azure Active Directory, permissions management, identity governance, workload identities, but also under Microsoft Entra umbrella, there is this service called Verified ID. And this is
Mm,
the service that enables you to configure and issue and verify verifiable credentials. So in this specific scenario, you don't have to build the whole decentralized system on your own. You can use Microsoft Entra Verified ID, which is available in the Azure cloud for free. And you can configure your verifiable credentials and then decide how you will issue them and how you will verify them, basing on
mm.
the open standards, obviously, which I will describe in a minute. When you think about verifiable credentials, obviously you can ask, okay, Daniel, the centralized identity, so it's hard because there are those protocols, standards, and so on. So how to make sure that, like this will be, I would say, generic and available for cross boundaries and so on. So first of
Mm.
all, Microsoft Entra Verified ID is Microsoft's implementation for verifiable credentials. So you can configure the service in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center or Azure portal. You can configure the Entra Verified ID service. You have set of APIs and SDKs that you can use to integrate with the service within your applications. And obviously, we have
Mm.
this digital wallet, which currently is Microsoft Authenticator. So like
Okay.
three parts of this solution, Entra Verified ID and Management Blade, SDKs and APIs to integrate with the service to issue and verify credentials, and Digital Wallet, which is Microsoft Authenticator app.
Okay. So I have a question over here, sort of thing. So you've divided into three parts. One is the using the Active Directory to actually issue it, and then there's the developer. If you're building an application, then you could use the developer tools to integrate with the SDK or API calls. And then you have a wallet, almost like a wallet, which is the end
Mhm.
user wallet of
Yes,
Microsoft Authenticator. So I mean, you could
correct.
technically not use the middle part too, right? I mean, you have the issuer, and then you have. Remember how we
Yes,
talked about trusted people IDPs. So I could technically use the trusted one
yes,
and don't have to develop anything because the applications were already developed somewhere else, and I could just use the authenticator, and the issuer interface.
exactly, Tasfar. So I think you touch on a very important topic, which is a topic related to standards. and this interoperability. When it comes to Microsoft Entra Verified ID, even if you think that, okay, it's in the Azure cloud, it's connected in the with Azure AD, so somehow probably this is like a custom implementation and so on provided by Microsoft. No, basically Entra Verified ID is built using all those standards like OpenID for verifiable credentials, self-issued OpenID provider, using the W3C verifiable credentials data model. So when you will dive into the topic, you will basically see that everything what was used, it was used from the standards and it's built on the standards. So it's not like Microsoft created something different than others use. No, it's based on the standards. Obviously, when it comes to some implementations like integration with API or configuration of the service, it can differ, obviously, but underneath it's based on the standards. And this is really, really important to be mentioned. Okay, that's far. So let's describe how it works, because I think this is really important to understand. So basically, as I mentioned before, we have those three parties. So there is issuer, Woodgroove, organization in this specific case, holder of verifiable credentials, so the user in the middle, and on the right side we have Fabricam, which is verifier, and this is another organization. And let's put a simple example with the proof of employment. So right now, what's happening underneath? Basically, we have public key infrastructure, which is distributed ledger. And we can talk about it later because it's, I would say, a bit complicated and more time will be required to explain that. But you can think about the place where those issuers and verifiers can place their public key, which will be used to verify credentials. So let me describe the process here, and then I will add a few more details to that. So basically, we have Woodgroove organization with verifiable credential service configured with Entra Verified ID. And this organization has its unique DID identifier, so decentralized identifier. And this identifier is linked to the DID document, which contains information about the public key, which is used to verify credentials and cryptographic operations. There is information about linked domains and some other details. So basically, it's like the structure, the JSON document with different kinds of details required to issue and verify credentials. And each DID is unique. So Woodgroove has its own DID recorded in the public key infrastructure. Fabricam has its own DID. So those DID, decentralized identifiers, are used in those operations to issue and verify credentials. So let's describe it. We have user, and basically right now, this user will get the verifiable credential from Woodgroove. So in the verifiable credential, we will have the information about the issuer. So we will have the centralized identifier of the issuer. Woodgroove, we will have information about the centralized identifier for the user. And also we will have some claims like title, since when this user, this worker worked for this company. And also we will have issuer's digital signature. So this verifiable credential will be signed. And now, because of the fact that this public key of Woodgroove is recorded on the public key infrastructure, so distributed ledger, which is Bitcoin blockchain in case of verifiable credentials, then I can access it from other places, from other organizations. So if we switch to the right side of the diagram, if Fabricam will require this user to present proof of employment at Woodgroove, user will present this verifiable credential. Obviously, all the data is there, like issuer DID, the holder DID, claims, but also there will be the issuer digital signature included as before, and the subject digital signature. So the signature of the user of the wallet. And now what will happen? Fabricam will look into the distributed ledger, so this public key infrastructure underneath, to check the public key material, so the public key, to verify whether this specific verifiable credentials credential was really signed by Woodgroove.
Okay.
If yes, then the presentation request will be successful and user is successfully verified. The
Okay.
important thing is, Taskar, that in this specific scenario, as you can see, there is no direct communication between Woodgroove and Fabricam. That's why
Mhm.
it's called decentralized, because as you can see, first of all, user data lands in the wallet, so in the
Mhm.
user wallet. And also, when it comes to verifications and issuance, those processes are separated here. So Fabricam doesn't have to contact Woodgroove. It will look into the distributed ledger to get public key. And because of the fact that there is information about the decentralized identifier in this verifiable credential,
Mhm.
Fabricam will use this DID, will retrieve the ID document, get public key from this document, and check whether a verifiable credential was signed by the Woodgroove.
Oh, okay. So
Long
in
story
some
short.
ways, if I could simplify it in some ways, it's basically Woodgrove wrote something into, let's say, a distributed database. So far, we call it a ledger, and it
Yeah.
has a key of some sort, a public key that has signed this verified credentials, and the user stores it in his wallet. And now, actually, it's providing the information to Fabricom to say that, hey, you know what? I do work for Woodgrove, and it has the signature of that. And what Fabricam does is actually, hey, let me retrieve the public key and try to see if
Mhm.
actually it's the same signature or not. So if it's the same
Correct.
signature, okay, you're good, you're verified, sort of thing. So that's the whole
Correct.
idea. Technically, actually, I also see this happening inside a browser too. If we think about it as in like, you know how you have HTTPS, a browser has the database of like all these certificates that are there with the public key,
Mhm.
and then you're just verifying it, making sure that the HTTPS is signed by a certificate authority. So
Correct. Yeah.
yeah,
Very good example. Yeah, that's how it works.
exactly.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah. So let me talk about some use cases for verifiable credentials with Microsoft Entra Verified ID, because now we understand, okay, like we can configure the service, it's free, uh, we know how it works at the higher level. What are some use cases? And there are many of them, basically. So when you think about healthcare, for instance, there can be verified patient concept. So we can use
Mhm.
verifiable credentials to store patients' profile information, to access medical data after presenting credential in the applications. So what you can do, you can basically either store some partial information about the patient in the verifiable credential and then use it in the applications, or you can also say like, okay, if this specific patient, after successful login using centralized identity approach, if this patient would like to access some, I would say, confidential, crucial data about themselves, then they have to present verifiable credential. Yeah. So
Mhm.
this is one of the examples. Uh, Another one, human resources, so verified employee. This is the example with Woodgroove and Fabricam. Yes, so we can utilize verifiable credentials to prove that someone is our employee. And today I will show you the fragment on the slides related to workplace verification on LinkedIn to prove that someone is really working or worked at some company XYZ.
Okay.
E-commerce verified coupon. So we can, again, in a digital form, we can use the verifiable credentials as coupons, providing complimentary incentives and discounts for customers. So you can think about the tickets to some, let's say, concerts. Instead
Mhm.
of using like paper tickets and so on, you can issue verifiable credential, or if there is some event, people can just use verifiable credentials to identify themselves, and then they are allowed to enter the specific event. Or you can present verifiable credential in the shop to, I don't know, get a free cup of coffee
Okay.
or, like additional item. Then insurance, verified agent. So you probably you heard about those different scenarios where someone was like presenting himself as a representative of some company, but the
Mhm.
reality was that this person was like a robber, for instance. Yes.
Yeah.
So in this specific scenario, when someone will knock to your door, you can ask, okay, show me your QR code. I will scan it and I will check whether you are really the representative of this specific company. Again, you can use verifiable credentials for that.
Mm-hmm.
Car rental, verified driver, yes. Verified drivers on site. During the first visit, obviously, it takes longer to verify drivers, collect information, and so on. But you can use verifiable credentials and you can say, okay, here is your verifiable credentials. We verified you. Next time, please present this verifiable credential, and this process will be much smoother and quicker than before. Yeah. So again, a really good example. And education, verified graduation, yes, just to collect information about your certifications in form of verifiable credentials. Okay, so two examples, I would say extended examples, because I want to show you the power behind verifiable credentials. And one of the examples is self-service account recovery. So in a typical scenario, you have to potentially call someone. Hello, my account is locked. I would like to change my password, or I cannot do this, I cannot do that. Yes.
Yeah.
But you can try to imagine the situation that instead of calling someone or proving your identity by, I don't know, providing some information over the phone, you are asked to present your verifiable credential, which was issued to you by the organization once this organization verified your identity. So instead of calling, you can present a verifiable credential, and then you can update your details, including the password. So very helpful. Yes, you can reduce the time on the call. And another example is with the car rental company. So it's more B2C scenario. So this is what I mentioned before. So to reduce the time customer spends on the car rental company, you can say, okay, once we verified you, we have all the documents, we have your driving license information, your ID, and so on. Here is your verifiable credential. You can get it, it will land in your wallet. And next time you want to rent the car, you can show us this verifiable credential, and then you will go in the fast track rental on the web portal. Yeah. So that's again really helpful example here. They also mentioned as well about the workplace verification on LinkedIn. And this is where verifiable credentials are also used. So in a typical world, you can try to imagine the situation where I can just update my profile on LinkedIn and I can say that, yes, I work for NASA and I'm an astronaut. Yeah. And
Maybe you are.
who will verify that? Yeah, exactly. So like I can do whatever I want. But with workplace credentials and verifiable credentials, you can really prove that you work at specific organizations. So as you can see, for instance, I work at Formula 5 as an innovation lead, and this credential was issued by the organization to me, and this information is displayed on LinkedIn. So now every time you will visit my profile, you can really see that, yes, it's true. Formula 5 confirmed that this guy is really working for them, and verifiable credentials were used underneath.
So this is sort of similar to the blue tick that we see in Twitter too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But here there is no additional cost. And when you think about Twitter, as you probably remember, the situation was hard. So but basically it's really helpful, as you can see, to verify your workplace credential. Okay, Taskforce. So I think that it's worth to see it in action because theory is theory, practice is practice, demo is demo. Okay, Taskforce. So here is Microsoft Entra Admin Center, but obviously you can access verifiable credentials service, so Entra Verified ID through the Azure portal. And as you can see here in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center, you have this tab called Setup. So basically, you have all the informations how to set up your Entra Verified ID service. There is also extended documentation how to do it. The link will be included in the video description. But basically, it's really well documented how to do it, and it will not take much time. The important fact is that you will need Azure Key Vault to configure Entra Verified ID, because Key Vault is used for those cryptographic operations like with public key and so on, we mentioned during the slides. And also, if you want to store branding for your like logos for your verifiable credentials, you can use Azure Storage account. But also,
Okay.
obviously, you can use any other storage account which will be publicly available.
Mm.
Okay, as you can see, I've already registered and configured my Entra Verified ID service. What is important here is in organization name, so Formula 5 in this case. I also have verified domain, which will be displayed in the Authenticator app. I will show you that in a minute.
Okay.
But I linked my domain with this service to just prove that, okay, this verifiable credential is really issued by the organization, which is the owner of this specific domain. That's
Mm.
how it works. And in the future, more verifications probably will be available. Now, when it comes to organization settings here, as you can see, here I have my decentralized identifier. Yes, this is what I mentioned before. So this is my decentralized identifier. And basically for my organization, I use
Mm.
Bitcoin blockchain, so DID Ion,
Okay.
but you don't have to use blockchain. So you can also use the ID web. So these existing domain systems which are available over the internet right now. So this is
Okay.
another topic, but the case is that no, you don't have to use blockchain.
Okay.
When I will basically what I can do, I can copy this DID, so decentralized identifier, and then I can retrieve the ID document. So if I will type Ion Explorer in my browser, you can see that there is this Explorer available for us
Mm.
from Identity Foundation, and I can copy this decentralized identifier. I can paste it here, and I can search for it. And it's searching over the distributed ledger.
Oh,
So in
okay.
the case of verifiable credentials and Entra Verified ID, a Bitcoin blockchain. So as you can see, using this decentralized identifier, I was able to get the ID document, which I was
Mm.
mentioning before. You can see that I have information about the linked domains like formula5.com, but
Mm.
also there is information about verification methods, public key information, and so on. So those details are used during
Mm.
those operations when we issue and verify credentials. So that's super cool that we can
Yeah.
use this Explorer to
This
check
this
the
this kind of
centralized
actually
identifier.
reminds me of the JOT token too. You know how you could put in your JOT
Yeah,
token and it
yeah,
tells you all the
yeah.
details. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. That's very similar. That's for
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So under credentials section, I can define verifiable credentials used by my organization. I have two. First one I want to show you is verified employee. So as you can see, this is the verified employee of Formula 5.
Mm.
And basically, the claims will be taken from the Azure Active Directory. So once
Okay.
I signed in, I will get my credential with my data.
Mm.
So the case is that I can change style here. So I can add logo URL. As you can see, it's hosted on the Azure Blob Storage.
Yeah.
I can change the text color and the background color.
Okay.
And this is the overview, the
Yeah.
preview of this credential. But I can also create fully customized credential. So let me switch to verified patient, for instance. And as you can see, um, here is my credential. I can
Mm.
also update the style, but there is also this advanced properties editor.
Mm.
And here in this editor, yeah, you have display definition. So how this verifiable credential will look like in the
Mm.
wallet
Yeah.
during the presentation, and also rules definition. So which claims will be included in this specific verifiable credential, this custom
Okay.
one.
Okay.
So that's the difference here. You can customize, you can fully customize the claims in the credentials. So now let me show you employee credential. Here is my application, my account for verified employee ID. Okay, what I will do here, as you
Mm.
can see, here is my phone mirroring on the left side. I will click retrieve your employee verified ID. And now QR code is displayed. And in my phone, I will click the QR code icon. And now I will scan this QR code. Once it's scanned, you will see, well, unexpected error occurred, but we got it. So it happens, real demo. But you can see that at the top, we have formula5.com. We have this information that the domain is verified. Yes. And basically, this is our verifiable credential for us. So if I will click add that this verified employee landed in my wallet, when I will open this, you will see that there is information about my position at Formula 5, so the job title, there is my email, and some other details. So now I have this verified employee credential, and I can use it to prove that I work for this organization. So for instance, I can use it on LinkedIn, as I mentioned before, Taskforce, and I can prove that, yes, I'm the owner, I'm the employee of Formula 5.
Okay. So basically, if I clarify it, the right side that you see currently, it's basically the issuer, and you have got it into your
Yes.
wallet right now, basically
Yes.
into your phone
Yes.
and to the wallet.
Exactly. Exactly. And now you can do it to prove you can use this verifiable credential to prove your identity at some other parties, verifiers. You can use it on LinkedIn and so on.
Okay.
Another demo I have here, because I mentioned that there is this verified patient, so custom credential. Yes. So it's more B2C scenario. So as you can see here, there is this login page to access patient portal. Yeah. So what I will do here, I will type my Formula 5 email like this. Yeah. And because I already registered, and I will provide my password like this, and I will click sign in. And now, after a few seconds, I'm redirected to the patient portal. Yes, as you can see, I'm here. Weird things are happening, Taskforce, during those demos, but at least you see that it's in real time. I signed in, and there is information that I can get my patient verifiable credential to log in faster to this portal, and obviously to use it to access the confidential healthcare data.
Yeah.
So on the left side, I can click Get Credential, and again, I have to scan it with my authenticator app. And as you can see, in a few seconds, on the left side, there is information that I have to provide the code. So I have to provide this PIN. So I will type this PIN, and I will click Next.
Yeah.
Again, as you can see, there is Formula 5 domain, because
Yeah.
this is exactly the same service. But there is information that this verified patient verifiable credential will be issued to you. So I will click Add. And now, as you can see,
You have
I
two of
have
them.
confirmation here in the portal, yeah, that verifiable credential was issued successfully. And when I will open it, you can see that there is patient ID, patient national healthcare ID, when it was issued, and some other details. So now what I can do, and I want to show you that, I can log out from the portal. And now on the login page, I can click verified patient login, and the QR code is displayed.
Yeah.
So what I will do in the authenticator app, I will scan the code, and this is the presentation part. So as you can see, QR code is scanned, waiting for validation. There is information that my verified patient will be shared with Formula Healthcare.
Yeah.
I can say, okay, share it. And once it's shared, validation is successful, and I'm authenticated and redirected to the patient portal. And right
Okay.
now I can start using it, yeah, access my confidential information about my health and so on.
Okay.
That's how it
So,
works.
so in some ways, it's almost like the old way that we, well, not say the old way, the multi-factor authentication that we know of. It's like how you like
Mhm.
go to a login page, there's an OTP. Now you have a QR code where you scan it because you have the verified credential on your phone already. It knows about each other, and then it actually allows you to log in. And it asks you to, do you
Correct.
want to share this information? And you say, yeah, I want to share it so that I could log in.
Correct.
And then it just basically logs in.
Correct. So this is what I wanted to present as
Right.
demos today. So as you
Mhm.
can see, there are so many different kinds of scenarios, but because you can use verifiable credentials in the corporate world, as I showed you with Formula 5 verified
Mhm.
employee, but also you can support B2C scenarios like this Formula Healthcare patient portal, yes,
Mhm.
and a
Yep.
verified patient verifiable credential. So I really encourage you to check it. Check this verifiable credential service, Microsoft Entra Verified ID. Try it on your own. It's super exciting, like how this identity space is right now growing and expanding.
So
So
Daniel, thank you so much. It was like amazing, all these demo and everything. I have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you too. So, what is the
sure.
best way to start using Microsoft Entra Verified ID?
Yeah, so Taskfar, in the video description, there is a link to the official documentation
Mhm.
where you have a detailed explanation how to start using verifiable credentials and Entra Verified ID. There is also a great demo which is called Woodgroove, and the
Mm.
link is also provided in the video description. So in this demo, you can just go step by step, get a verifiable credential, then present it, and so on. So I encourage you to check the links in this video description.
Great. So another question that I have is blockchain actually underneath used by this verified ID?
Yeah, that's very good question and very often asked. So yes, there is Bitcoin blockchain underneath used
Mm.
by Entra Verified ID, but you don't have to use blockchain during the verified ID service creation and configuration. You can decide which trust system will be used. So either
Okay.
DID Web, and it
Mhm.
will not use blockchain, or DID Ion, and then Bitcoin blockchain is used underneath.
Okay, great. And one of the things that people always ask, like, is this a standard, or Microsoft came up with its own standards? Like, what are the open standard comes? Is this implementation? I think we talked about it in one of the slides, but like, can you actually mention
Yeah,
about these standards?
exactly. Yeah, exactly, Taskfar. So that's very important that Microsoft works closely with other organizations and
Mm.
foundations to make sure that all those protocols can be used in different kinds of solutions. So it's not like Entra Verified ID is something different. No, it's
Mhm.
based on open standards like OpenID for verifiable credentials, self-issued OpenID provider, and so on, or the W3C standards for verifiable credentials, to make sure that in the future those systems will be interoperable. Yeah, so that's
Mm.
very important to be mentioned.
And one other question is, I saw that you were using the authenticator. Is authenticator required for this verified ID?
So it was, but recently during the build, it was
Mm.
there were two SDKs announced for iOS and Android. The
Okay.
links are also provided in this video description, so you
Mm.
will be able to integrate verifiable credentials into your application directly. You don't have to use Microsoft Authentication and Authenticator anymore.
Okay, cool. One last question. Call for action for our audience. What would be your call for actions? Start using Entra and Verify ID, or
Yes, exactly. So first of all, is try to configure the service, try to check the demo application included in the video description. I also
mm,
encourage you to, if you want to learn more about verifiable credentials, concepts, and so on, to watch my YouTube video I created about verifiable credentials and Entra Verified ID. It's also included in the video description. And like try to present verifiable credential, and I think that this is really the future, and it's worth learning about it, because yeah, I think this is the next big step in the identity management.
mm. Great. Thank you so much, Daniel. I learned quite a lot today too. So I really appreciate all these verified IDs and all that stuff. It's like eye-opening to a lot of things. So again, thank you, Daniel, for joining the MVP Tech Bytes. Maybe we'll see you again in the future.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me, Taspar, for the invite. I hope you enjoyed the session. Others enjoyed the session. And of course, see you somewhere in the future. So thank you so much.
Take
Bye.
care. Thank you. Bye.